Let's talk about your story idea and how crucial it is. You've probably heard the term high concept. We'll go over that and talk about how it might actually not be enough. We'll also discuss some techniques you can use to increase the value of your concept. I would say probably 75 to 80% of the scripts I read, the concept is just dead on arrival, which is sad because if you're going to spend 6 months to a year to 2 years working on a script, to have it die before you even write it because the concept just isn't there, you want to avoid that. A hot concept can go a long way towards breaking you into the industry and getting your film made. So you've probably heard high concept. What does that mean? It's just an idea that is easy to summarize in 1 to 2 sentences. It has inherent conflict. You can see the poster. You can imagine scenes. You just get it. So examples would be things like Air Force One. The president is in his plane and terrorists take it over. Or Sharknado. It's a tornado of sharks. In each of those, you see the conflict, you get it. High concept usually also has some irony in it. Like with What Women Want, it's a male chauvinist who is cursed to now hear the thoughts of women. Or in Liar Liar, it's a lawyer who is cursed to have to tell the truth. So you sometimes want the least likely person who would be in that scenario. Years ago, there was a miniseries, The Thornbirds, where a priest fell in love. High concept definitely has conflict inherent in the idea and also sometimes irony. But a big idea that you can easily summarize isn't necessarily enough. Let's say you're doing a cabin in the woods story. A group of friends summer at a cabin in the woods and are attacked by zombies. Well, that's high concept in that you can summarize it easily, but it's been done. And so there's nothing interesting or new about it, and it's kind of predictable. It doesn't get you excited. You don't go, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen. You kind of go, whatever. As opposed to Sharknado. You want to have something that Terry Rossio calls a strange attractor. If you don't know about the website Wordplayer.com, you can thank me now for telling you about it. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, they wrote Shrek, they wrote Pirates of the Caribbean, they wrote The Mask of Zorro. They're genius, and they have all kinds of free articles on that website, wordplayer.com, about writing, about the business, about their journeys. They've also got all their screenplays online. You can read them. I found it when I was first starting out, and it highly influenced my writing. So there's an article on that website called Strange Attractor, where Terry talks about there needs to be something unique and compelling about your idea. Not just high concept, not just easy to summarize, not just having conflict, not just having irony. There's something unique and compelling. So take a book, I haven't read it, but there's a book published called Top 10, and it's about a serial killer who ends up on the number 10 spot on the FBI's most wanted list, and he's pissed because he's vain, and he thinks, what, I'm number 10, he wants to be number 1. He starts killing all the other serial killers to become number 1. So that's interesting. It's a different twist. It's kind of Dextery, but it's something different. On Terry's article he wrote on Wordplayer, he used the example, an innocent man convicted of a murder investigates his crime from his jail cell. You get it, and it's okay, but he said something more interesting would be an innocent man convicted of murder learns how to astral project himself and goes out of his jail cell astrally to investigate his crime and prove his innocence. Okay, now we've got something very different. And your movie doesn't have to be like something huge like Sharknado. It can also just be a situation that's surprising and has inherent conflict. Something like a defense attorney falls in love with her client who may or may not be guilty of murder. Or like in American Beauty, where we have a man lusts after the underage friend of his daughter. So just something that just spikes your interest and is unique. It's not another cabin in the woods movie. It's not another zombie movie. It's got high concept. You can summarize it easily. It's got conflict. It might have irony, but there's also just something interesting, unique, and compelling about it. Now that's kind of tough, right? Finding a really interesting, compelling idea that hasn't been done before. And here's where it gets even worse. One idea might not be enough. That's right. Just because you have a high concept idea doesn't necessarily mean it's a home run, because a screenplay is quite long. An hour and a half is a lot of time to fill, and just hitting the same concept over and over again might not be enough to fill the whole script. You want to kind of start to have it twist and turn and get even more complicated. So now we're going to talk about another article that you'll find on the Wordplayer site, The Second Concept, again written by Terry Rossio. Remember that book I talked about, Top 10, where we have the serial killer who's number 10 on the list and he wants to be number 1, so he's starting to off everyone else on the list? That book actually has a second concept. There's an FBI agent following him, trying to stop him, and she's been given orders to save number 5 on the list at all costs. So now we have even more high concept ideas, even more twists and turns. Terry gives another example in the article on Wordplayer. He talks about the movie Deja Vu that they wrote. And I do believe the screenplay for Deja Vu is available on their website, and I highly recommend you read that for several reasons. But they talk about the big concept of it is that it's an investigator who uses a time window to go back in time and see the crime while also trying to solve the crime in current time. So there's these two different time aspects happening. And in the article he says they decided that wasn't enough. Someone else gave them a second concept which deepened and complicated that concept. They decided to have the investigator start to fall in love with the woman who was murdered, even though now she's dead. More complication, a richer story. I do believe the script for that movie Deja Vu is available on their website, so you should read it to see how they do that, but also because there's something I've talked about in other videos. We're a little off topic here, but in a lot of scripts, when you're bringing in the character's ghost, what haunts the character, their past, I see too many screenwriters put that right in the beginning. They feel like they have to set everything up so you understand everything from the very beginning, and so you get the ghost right away. Well, in Deja Vu, they very wisely and very expertly give you little tiny clues as to the lead character's ghost, and then they don't reveal the ghost until later in the script. And it's because they're genius and they know how to layer more mystery and have more things driving the story forward. So I would recommend you read that screenplay on Wordplayer. It's called Deja Vu. Now you might be thinking, oh great, how am I going to come up with 2 concepts? You're going to meditate a lot. You're going to take a lot of walks. You're going to think about it. It'll come to you. But there could be some techniques for helping you find that second concept. One of them would be look at your antagonist. So if you've got this really great plot idea for your protagonist, how can you give a little twist or something interesting to the antagonist? And the antagonist could be the love interest, or it could be the villain. Look at the movie Die Hard. Die Hard is high concept, right? The terrorists take over Nakatomi Plaza and John McClane has to save all the hostages. But it's actually 2 really good concepts, 2 really good ideas, because Hans Gruber is pretending to be a terrorist, and we find out in the middle he's really just a thief, but he's using what he knows about the protocol that they will use for terrorists to help him better get away with his crime. So it's actually 2 ideas, not just 1. So look to your antagonist and see if you can give them their own interesting story that twists. Another way to maybe come up with your second idea is to think about what if you took what you're going to write, the current idea, and instead of spreading it out over your entire screenplay, what if that was only half of your screenplay and somehow it had to go from there? What would happen? Think about that one. Something else that supports the second idea concept, there was a list that was tweeted by Emma Coates. She worked at Pixar, and there were certain rules about storytelling that she learned, 22 rules, and she tweeted these rules. Well, here is number 4. It's kind of a template for a log line to design your story. It's once upon a time there was blank. Every day, blank. One day, blank. This would be your inciting incident. What happened? Because of that, blank. So here's your plot. Here's what's happening. Then there's a second one. Because of that, blank. So there's kind of 2 twists in the middle, and then it ends with until finally blank. So that template for a log line kind of has inherent in it that you got to have more than just one thing going on. It's got to twist, escalate, and kind of ratchet up a notch in the middle, so that second concept can really help. Here's a challenge for all you screenwriting party people. Let's say we come up with this concept, all of us, we're all writing a screenplay together, and the concept is it's a reverse ET. So we have an astronaut in space and he crash lands on a planet and he's being kept safe by some alien children. That's very high concept, you instantly get it, but it doesn't really feel like enough. It feels like there needs to be something else. So think about that one, and if you come up with an idea for kind of a second idea that can be in that, a little twist, something that takes it to the next level, maybe an antagonist concept, something like that, put it in the comments below if you can come up with a second idea to take that idea to the next level. We've got reverse ET, astronaut crashes on a planet, the alien children are keeping him safe and hidden, and then what? Put it down below if you can think of something. Now we're going to talk about the final thing when it comes to your idea, and this is another article on the Wordplayer site, Mental Real Estate. And in the article he talks about how Hollywood likes known entities, but if you can't get Stephen King to give you the rights to adapt one of his short stories, that would be great value. You'd probably have no trouble selling that to Hollywood. Then you've got to find some way to have it compete against all the franchise movies and the things that are based on comic books and other known entities. Well, just because you might not have access to, let's say, the Monopoly game, so you can't write Monopoly the movie, there are still known entities that are available in the public domain that you can use. Now, I'm not just talking about things like fairy tales or novels that are in the public domain, although those are very popular, and that is a way to give your piece more inherent value. But there are other things that are very common to all of us. So in the article, he gave examples of things like the movie Gladiator. Gladiators are a thing. They're a known entity. And so that movie capitalized on that entity. Well, also things like The Graduate, The Godfather, The Wedding Singer, or things like The Wedding Planner, or the movie Bridesmaids. There are certain things that we all know about, like bachelor parties. Lately we've had Bad Moms, we have Bad Santa. So you can take something that is well known, like high school reunions or proms, or maybe you do a movie about quinceanera, something like that. You could take something that is a known entity and write about that, and it immediately gives your script more value because you're kind of capitalizing on something that's known. This wasn't in his article, but I watched a documentary that talked about marketing, and they said when they were naming a product, if let's say you're selling a breakfast burrito that's frozen that is in your grocery store, if you just called it Sam's Breakfast Burrito, it wouldn't have as much value as if you called it Montana burritos, or if you called them Dakota burritos, because you're capitalizing on something that's known, Montana or Dakota. If you capitalize on something that's familiar and is already well known by everyone, it can elevate your material to the next level. So let's say you're doing a story about two women who one of their friends is killed and they turn into detectives to solve the crime. Well, if you name it Shirley and Franny, and it's about two women who try to solve their friend's murder, it might not have as much value as if you call it maybe book club, and maybe they belong to a murder mystery book club, and then one of the girls in the book club turns up dead and they have to solve the crime. So now you're capitalizing on more of a known entity. Or if all the women in the group were in the PTA, then you can call it PTA and it can revolve around that. Or if they're all soccer moms, if you called it Soccer Moms and then it all revolved around the soccer moms, you're giving it instantly more cachet and value to your concept so it could get more attention. And it could even be in little small ways. If you've already written a story and it just isn't high concept, it doesn't necessarily really grab people, you could make tiny changes so that it does. Let's say you wrote a story about this guy who just put an ad on Craigslist for a ride share from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and some guy who's a cross-dresser answered his ad, and the two of them go on a road trip to San Francisco and wacky things happen. Well, if it's called something like The Road Less Traveled, and the log line is a guy who's doing ride sharing goes with a cross-dresser to San Francisco. It's kind of smushy. It's not really like grabbing you. But if you made one little change and you had the cross-dresser as maybe a female impersonator who maybe impersonates Britney Spears, well, then you could call the whole script 2 Days in a Toyota with Britney Spears. And then the cross-dresser is Britney Spears. Instantly, it's got a little more cachet to it because you're kind of capitalizing on a well-known entity. If you're doing a serial killer movie and he kills women he finds online, well, instead of just making up some website that he finds them on, make it Tinder and call it Tinder Kills or something like that. So you're capitalizing on something we know. Or if you just want to do like some kind of horror movie that's a cabin in the woods movie that we've seen again and again and just doesn't really have any kind of spice to it, what if you called it the Donner Party and the people in the Donner Party become possessed by spirits and that's what made them eat each other? So now you've got something bigger than just a cabin in the woods movie. So try to find some way you can capitalize on known entities to increase the mental real estate of your story. Please do yourself a favor. If you're going to spend 6 months, a year, 5 years writing a screenplay and putting all that work into it, make sure you start with the best possible concept you can so that it's not dead on arrival. You will put yourself so far ahead of other screenwriters and give your script a much better chance of success. I hope this video helped you. If it did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will talk to you later.